time to join in today. Yeah, it's quite a rainy day today here. Not a whole lot in terms of going out with myself today. But what I was doing is I was setting up for a recording that I wanted to do later on this week, where I'm going to use my two notes to go from the lane into the two notes, but I wanted to use my vintage wah pedal. And this is the mod tone vintage wah. Little cat hair there. Cat hair is the devil's work. And The problem is that I wanted to use the 9-volt battery with it. And so I opened up the compartment and I saw that inside there was already a 9-volt battery, but I thought to myself, I bought this many years ago and I never used it. This was actually, I tested it out, I think, on one of our shows that we did in Singapore, and that was the last time that I ever touched this thing. But for the track that I'm doing this week, it calls for a wah. I know how to use it. I've been using a wall since I was 16, so there's nothing really there new to it for me. But I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this has been sitting in Singapore, which is a very humid place. And you don't want to leave stuff like this inside your pedals in Singapore because the rust factor will it'll go up pretty high on you. It will expedite the amount of rust that if you've ever had that, if you've ever had an older pedal or a pedal that got moist and you started getting that rust in the contacts, that can happen to you. And on top of that, a 9-volt battery is a very difficult thing to get in Europe. Not on, so you have to dig around for get them online. But being a rainy Sunday and wanting to test this out, I said to myself, well, that's not going to happen today. Well, let me at least take the battery out and see how bad, if any, the contact rust is. Took it out, and the battery, this, the battery was still in its plastic because when I tested this, I used the 9-volt connection for my pedal board. The battery was brand new, it was still wrapped in plastic. The compartment of this pedal was pristine, and so pretty funny stuff. So that was my big haha moment today. Now it's awesome because it really is hard to get a 9-volt battery in Europe, other than online. A lot of local shops, they won't carry them. Triple A, double A's, D batteries, I think stuff like that pretty easy. 9 volts not so easy. So I did that today. So let's review this last week. So this last week, I concluded my it wasn't supposed to be a trilogy, but it ended up being one. My 3-part episode regarding the Epiphone SG versus the Harley Benton DC Custom. And we went through the bodies, we went through the hardware, we went through all that stuff, pickups. We threw in my 1959 Epiphone as a kind of a third party, and we concluded the test with an A, B, and C blind test on the bridge pickups. And was very surprised that we discovered that the Epiphone pickups, as I suspect, as I was hearing when I plug it in here into my board when I'm recording, are just awesome. I mean, surprisingly awesome. The first Epiphone, as you guys know, or may or may not know if you're new with us, I bought was a 2013. It was in 2013, 2014. I got it, and it was an S. It was a Les Paul. It was a standard. I don't think it was a pro. Yeah, it was a pro, but it was all black, just like my current Epiphone SG. The pickups in that were terrible. I played it through a little bit, and I ended up putting in Saturday Night Specials in there. And just again, my experience playing Epiphones and over the years, just I came down to it must be the pickups. Well, I no longer will regulate them to the bottom heap of pickup history. They are actually, you guys should check it out. Noodlin Guitars was putting a comment down in that last show that I'm talking about, we're reviewing, where he pointed out that Epiphone pickups on the secondhand market are actually pretty difficult to find. If you and he's right. In my experience, you're going to get you're not going to get them straight from the manufacturer. At his point, they don't do a lot of the manufacturing exporting of just the pickups like Gibson does with its burst buckers and 61 T and R and whatnot. Uh, yeah, they're kind of like the Gibson Custom Shop, those Pro Buckers, those top of the line ones they have now in their really good custom shop. Yeah, you have Wayview. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Newland. Yeah, you don't have a lot of choices, and yeah, you even it's similar as I was saying to those Gibson pickups. No gold covers. Yeah, yeah. Forget about that. You want gold covers? Forget about it. There's one set, yeah. So they'll come up again. Yeah, there's a set on Amazon, and they'll come up on Reverb as well. But very infrequently, and usually the ones that come up on Reverb have been taken out of an existing guitar. Like for example, back in the day, I would say, "Hey, I'm pulling these out. I'm putting them up for sale," and that's how they would come up. Again, getting gold covers or any kind of choices of the different varieties that they have, because there's the classic pros, the pro buckers, getting or and now their copy of the Noodle and what is that one they just you were talking about they just came out with, and yeah, you can't get those on the open market from the manufacturer. So I think that they're a lot cooler than really a lot of people. The 98Ts, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, 98T. Uh, yeah, which are copies of the Gibson counterparts. So really, guys, yeah, 98T only comes in the JC Wino right now, I think. So this is even a newer set of wines that Epiphone is introducing into the market. So they're really stepping up their game in terms of the wines that they're putting out. Again, there's discrepancy in terms of what alnico magnets, 2 or 5. I've read in a lot of reputable places that Epiphone themselves were saying that these were manufactured, completed in the States and then shipped over. And I just read something today that I was looking into it when it was pointed out to me that, again, that verifies it was they're designed in the States but produced in China. So those are both coming from Epiphone. The one regarding production in the United States, that is old. It's a 2012 brochure or conversation. I saw it on my Les Paul forum. If you guys go dig, you can find it. It's there. But either way, it doesn't matter. These are fantastic pickups for the money. And I like that because that's going to segue into what we're going to talk about tonight, our discussion about saving money in the studio. I feel sometimes I stray away from my true calling to YouTube. As you know, I traveled along the road of success or not success, depending upon how it went. A lot of successes. But those roads took me to different countries, and it did not allow me to have a lot of gear. I had to really focus on what was important and what I could get from one end to the other because I had to pay for the moving. Nobody was paying that for me. And moving fees are very expensive. You can spend $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 just moving from one country to the other. And I moved countries, not city to city. And so I had to really narrow it down. So my concept for this YouTube channel was really to talk about how to produce high quality recordings. Because again, I have stuff that's playing on radios and in movie theaters for the TV commercial work that I've done. Not disregarding the pop music that I've done. So, but I've done it on a budget. I've done it really cheap and really well. And I'm pointing out pedals, excuse me, a great deal to you guys. And I'm talking about guitars and pickups a lot. And those are pricey things. Pickups and again are 80% of the game, and guitar they're expensive items. And pedals, you can get something on the low end side again, like these Moore or some of these. I got this Harley Benton Dr. D pedal that I paid 17 euros for, 20 with shipping, just on a goof. And last night I was just sitting here and I put it into my board here and put my tube screamer in front of it because that's the classic combination is the Dumble amp with the tube screamer. There's a particular sound to that. Again, just another variation of the Fender amp sound, which, as you guys know, I'm rather fond of these days. And I was blown away by that pedal for 1720. I mean, it has a sparkle to it. Not I've had a few of the other Harley Benton mini stomp pedals. This one stands out. For 17 euros, guys, I can highly recommend that you take a look at it. It's the Dr. D. It's their Dumble pedal. You dial that thing in right, and it's pretty awesome. It has a beautiful sparkle to it, and you put it in with a tube screamer, and you can get pretty dang well close to that Dumble sound. Now, that said, is to point out that that's not an expensive pedal. It's something that I've put on my board, and it's something that I'm going to use down the line for recording. I can see myself. If it's on the board, it's probably going to be used. It's definitely going to be used. And I guess, however, I haven't talked about areas that you can save money. That's an example, but that's not really a real example because I still believe that you want to pay a little bit more for pedals, just like with your pickups. There are some exceptions, and we're finding out still, even with the Epiphones, you're talking about $125, which is going to be the cost of your average pedal of any kind of decency to quality to it. There is one area in the studio that I believe these days that you can absolutely save money and have a wide variety of them, and you can do it for under $300, and that's with microphones. I haven't really talked about mics, so let's talk about that tonight. Now, we talked about how last week with guitar pedals, with the advancements in IR technology, with mic simulation, in this case, technology, you can get a variety of studio mics, all the good ones, all the ones that I dream of, like the 414. That's like my dream microphone. I got to use it in the studio a few times, but you can get those with really good preamp simulations as well. And that can be had for whatever you want to spend. Slate Digital comes out with one that I use. It's excellent. So really with microphones, back in the day when I first started recording in major studios, you had to have quality microphones. The microphones that I was handling with literally sometimes with gloves to set up because of the age and the quality of the microphones and just not wanting to get dust in them were multi-thousand, 8,000, 10,000. That was back then. Now they're probably $20,000, $30,000 mics that were used in the professional studios. And in the minor studios, the 8-track and the 16-track studios is where I learned that you didn't have to use those expensive mics to get a quality sound. However, you did have to have quality mic preamps. So a lot of these 8 and 16 track studios in LA that I was working back as a teenager on up, really where they invested their money in was in the mic preamps. The mics that they had were very simple. And one that I'm sure that you guys are very familiar with is the SM57. This is a baseline mic. If you don't have this microphone in your studio, you really should. This is the king of multi-purpose mics. Dynamic microphone. So no need for any kind of phantom power with this. That's a cool thing. Cool thing is that it's fantastic for vocals. It's fantastic for tracking guitars, acoustic instruments, snares, hi-hats, and of course guitar amps. This is the mic that you would hear over countless thousands of recordings that was used to mic amps. It's the one that I use to mic my amps with. So $120, I think this is going for. So there you have all-in-one microphone. If it was your desert island microphone, it really would be this. I'd be interested to hear what you guys desert island microphone would be. Mine would be the SM57 because this thing is built like a tank. This thing will last. I've had this for decades. I've had this for a long time. I don't. I've heard that they somehow change. You hear that? Oh, the old ones are better. Maybe so, maybe not. But an SM57 is an SM57. So that is a good place to start. Again, the mic pre's are the 80% of your game in this chain, in this signal chain. It's going to be your mic pre's. Whether they're hardware mic pre's or software-based mic pre's like mine, that's where you want to invest the most money in obtaining the best sound that you can. And also with a mic like an SM57 and something like Slate, I use the mic pre's in the Slate. I don't use any of the microphone simulations. No need. I have a microphone that I like. But with the mic pre's and SM57, and then the choices, of course, that you could make within that of selecting different mics, that could be your base mic to emulate any number, 414, as I was saying, a Rode, anything. So pretty cool. And I forget what the Slate Digital is going for, a couple $100. So for under $300, with around $300, you'd have everything you would need to digitally replicate any microphone that you needed. Okay, that's if you're in a situation where you just need one mic. I'm of the belief that you should have at least 3 microphones basic in your studio, each one of them able to do its task by itself in a large range of situations, from vocals to instrument tracking, but at the same time in combination with others to be able to add a unique tone of its own. So the 2 mics that I believe that fall and that I use and have used for years is the Behringer B1 and the Behringer C1. Now, each one of these this is a $50 mic. So there you go with the SM57 120, you're at 170. This is a $130 mic, so there you are right at 300, or maybe a little bit. Maybe these can be had used for even cheaper than that. But these 2 microphones together in a studio setting are fantastic for doing a lot of things. Now, what did I use them for? In my Singapore studio, when I had live drum tracking, I used these as my left and right overheads. They gave a wonderful room tone. Both of them gave a different little bit of flavor to that room tone, and I was able to blend in together. With the SM57 over the snare, I put all that in 2-track that. Also, these are not dynamic; these are condenser microphones. So you do need phantom power to run these. However, for vocals, for instruments, for acoustic guitar, for recording, this one, because you can roll off the bass. There's a switch here where you can do a bass roll off. This is fantastic also for recording guitars. I've done that with the SM57 and at an angle, and this one a little bit further back in the room to catch a little bit of distance to get a depth in the tone. As a matter of fact, I did that with my recording of my track Belly Dancer, which you'll hear one of these days. Using 2 microphones, and it was the SM57 and the B1. The C1 really is fantastic, again, for all around for doing vocals, but its real shine is on acoustic guitars and acoustic instruments. This is the microphone that I use for recording acoustic mandolin. So the mandolin is a very sharp, sharp, sharp piercing instrument. And you really have to roll off those highs. Now you can do it with an EQ, but you'll lose a little bit of the charm of it when you start messing with it. You can't cut too much. If you have a microphone like this one that seems to respond very well to capturing the instrument, but not making it shrill, this one is one that I found, and again, $50 you can have used, maybe even 30 these days. They don't. I don't think they make. Do they make these anymore? Uh, are these museum pieces? Am I holding up like out of the original telephone? But yeah, but no, seriously, guys. So I've used these three microphones, and it's been all I've needed. To be frank with you, I did not invest a great deal of money into microphones. I had a fantastic mic preamp that once the digital ones came out, I don't use. I sold it. I got rid of it again because the digital one in the Mac here is the way to go. So anyhow, I don't mind. I'm still funny about a lot of IRs, but that one doesn't bother me. Again, it has its usefulness and saves you a lot of money. It's really a fantastic way of looking at it. Is for a couple $100, you can get everything that you need in order to do everything in your small project studio. And if you invest again in the right mic preamp, for under $500, even if you went for all three of these in the Slate digital preamps, VSTs, you're good to go for $500 and you don't need anything else. That's it. You're done. Finished. That's your investment. And these things are built like tanks. They'll last forever. I keep them in their case. These come in cases. Keep them in the case, keep them nice, and they'll last you forever and not a really big investment. And again, I just found out, I learned this again because I was in those major studios like Yap Young, working for Babyface, and setting up the Studio A and setting up the B studios as well. And then going to like Right Track or some of those other 8 and 16 track studios where they didn't invest a lot of money. And the mics they had were like SM57 and Behringer type equivalents, but their mic pre's were pretty great. So I learned that lesson a long time ago, and I'll pass that little bit of knowledge on to you. You can do with it as you will, make of it as you wish. Yeah, but it is one area in your project studio, amateur or pro, that you can save money. I was watching Rick Beato do an interview with Tim Pierce. Tim Pierce, if you guys don't know, is a great LA session guitarist. I do believe that he was the one who did the tracks on Rick Springfield's Jesse's Girl album. That's him playing the guitar parts. And he and Rick Beato were talking about back in the day when a guy like Steve Lukather, another fantastic, if you don't know who Steve Lukather is, please look him up. Fantastic LA session guitarist would come to the session with 2 Fender Deluxe amps and 2 Marshall heads. And then have her mini guitars that he brought along. And just the fact that that in itself is just crazy. Imagine how Steve Lukather's back is these days. That guy, I'm surprised he's not in a wheelchair in his old age. But imagine having to do that back in the day. And again, when I was mixing in LA, and I had a little rack that I brought around of stuff. Nowadays, you don't need any of that. Again, we have made such advancements that I can confidently say that if I brought a good Fender Deluxe amp pedal to the studio and a good pedal, of a Marshall, I would be good to go. And again, those guys, one of the things that they would do is they would not just have Steve, he would bring his amps, but they would also have the studio would have their amps. And the other guys would have their amps, and they would go through all these amps and say, okay, this is the best sounding one for this studio in this situation. The amount of excess that speaks of tells you about the kind of budgets that were going on in the professional world back in the day when I first got the studios, because this is the same period, late 80s, early 90s. And the kind of budgets were off the chain. Those kind of budgets don't exist anymore. You are not going to get into a situation. If I was called in to do a song for a commercial, and I said, okay, I'm going to bring in my two Fender Deluxes and my Marshall, and we're going to decide which one sounds best, I'd get fired, quite frankly. You need to show up. You need to have something that you can plug in, that you can quickly work with, that is not going to blow out on you or blow up, the sound. And that's pretty much well it, because time is money. You don't have that kind of budget where you have those kind of time. It's really, 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 really fast. And that's a shame, I think, because by having the luxury of choosing the types of amp that fit that room, which sounded best in that room, of course, you were making just that much better of a record. And that's why a lot of those records from the late 80s and 90s stand out as sounding fantastic. If you listen to a Toto album, like, was that Rose? All I Want to Do is Spend the Night, Rosanna. Yeah, Rosanna. Listen to that. And just the quality of that recording, even then when I heard it, when it first came out, I knew that this was the epitome of studio recording, and to this day, it stands out. It's still just an awesome recordings, because those guys really took the time to make those recordings, and they had the budget to do those. Unfortunately, those budgets no longer exist. But again, yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, Tim Pierce brings up just the memory of those days to me, where I can really just sit back and say, wow, there was a lot of excess. Now, of course, the artists were being charged by the labels for this. It wasn't a free lunch. You were paying for it. If you were the artist. That's why those rapper guys at Babyface's studio, when I was doing second engineering and runner, and they would order burgers, and they had their crew and their buddies, and oh, we want In-N-Out burgers. So I would have to get in my car, drive to the Hollywood In-N-Out Burger, get everything. The order had to be correct. It had to be perfect. And at the time, until the studio manager, because I complained and the studio manager explained it to me, and I will to you in a minute. At the time, I was like, these guys are jackasses. I'm not gonna. But I got reprimanded for just not bringing enough pickles. In one instance, and I complained to the studio manager, and he said to me, Mike, those guys are paying for that. That's coming out of his royalties. And if he orders it, and that's what he wants, get it to him, because he's paying for it. If those pickles don't show up, he's, and it's on the receipt, he's still paying for it, because all the receipts, all the stuff went to the label. Dig that. And after I learned that, and I would see these guys with their entourages in the studios, I would sit there and think to myself, man, this guy is an idiot. I can think of one, or I'm not going to say his name. And he had about 10 guys in the A studio, and he's feeding them, and they're not reaching for their wallets, and that's coming out of his budget, and they're just wasting time. Yeah, those days don't exist. I'm sure they do. Nowadays, people build their private studios so you can do whatever. But those kind of excesses, the things that I saw, yeah, I don't really think that's going on anymore. But the beauty of that, again, like I said, was the quality of the recordings. Now, do I think that we can achieve just as good a quality with things as I was talking tonight, the cheaper microphones, but using VSTs in order to replicate those famous mic pre's? Yeah, sure. I use the CLA 76. It's 1176 clone. I use that thing all over my recordings. I had in a studio that a friend of mine had an opportunity to spend 1176 all summer back in the day, and really got to know that thing really well, and how to use it correctly, what it's good for. I use it as there's a way of setting it so that you can give your electric guitars a bit of it, even more of a little bit of a boost. And yeah, really seriously, the 1176 plugin that I use, I can't tell the difference. So yeah, I think that we bridge that gap in a lot of ways. That gap, like I said, between analog and digital is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Those pedals that we were talking about last week really point in that direction. It shows you that that gap between analog amps and the pedal copies is getting smaller and smaller. It's getting down from that 5% that I talk about down to that 1%. And again, that 1% being entropy, the fifth law of thermodynamics, chaos, which comes in just because they're made by hand. And there's no way that you can really replicate that in a mass production environment. So, again, guys, I think tonight's theme and what I really wanted to talk about was about the fact that this is what I use. Now, there is a fourth mic right here over my shoulder. You can see it, the little red base there. That is my vocal mic. I've owned that mic for 3 decades. I bought it at the Guitar Center in LA, and it's a Russian-made microphone. I believe it may have come from the same cats from Electro Harmonix. I can't tell because it's sold. Everything's been worn off on it. It's just really just the blank casing on it and the mic. But I've used that as it was at that time a company that no longer exists, so you can't get it anymore. It was a one-off. The guy said, "Hey, if I was looking for a condenser microphone," and the guy at the Guitar Center again talking about the '90s Guitar Center and how superior it was to now, where you had really, really knowledgeable guys. If you walked in and you said something and you were thinking, "Oh, I want to get A," they'd say, "Hey, that's cool, but let me show you B." And this was a situation where he said, "Let me show you B. These came in, it's a new company. I think that these are great. They're comparable to such and such, whatever it was." He says, but at a fraction of the price. He says, "If take it home and try out. If you don't like it, of course, you can bring it back to me, and I'll give you a deal on the one you came in with." And I said, "Great." And I took it home, and I've had it for 30 years, 28 years. True story. I did this company. Believe me, I've tried to look and to remember what this, but I know they're not in business, bro. It was just another one of those companies that came in. They tried to get into the condenser microphone market, and they got snuffed out by the competition. It happens, but they actually had a good product. In this case, it wasn't a bad product. They just didn't have the scope of manufacturing and distribution in order to compete. But I've had that microphone for that long, and it's a fantastic microphone. It's all that I use. And so those are my 4 microphones that I have, and they're all that I've ever had. So again, I haven't invested a great deal of money in microphones, and yet my recordings are pretty good. I think they sound pretty good. Of course, there's my experience in recording. What you get to tape is important as well. But just the point to you guys this week, to just raise the issue that with microphones, if you get these are what I consider to be the basics. Any two of these will give you the basics. To have all three of these, you really got all your bases covered for $300. And I really, I'll stick to that. You may have others that are comparable. TIAC has a couple that we could talk about as well, I suppose. But just as the basics and well known, these are the ones that you want to go with in that regard. Big leaps, big leaps. Again, I can't. Every week I sit here and talk about it, and I'm kind of it's sort of a catharsis for me to go through it in my own head, kind of live on camera with you guys, and just really juxtaposition where I was in the '90s when I was standing in the A studio at Yab Young in front of that SSL board and all the accoutrements that comes with that, to now where I'm sitting here in this small room that I've converted into a studio. And yeah, I'm not missing anything. As a matter of fact, I think that you can make superior recordings even over that with the right knowledge, with knowing what you're doing. That's a place to start. But you can do it for quite an inexpensive way of knocking together. With amps and with guitars and things like that, again, I'm of the opinion with a guitar, your pickups are 80% of the game. This week, I think I've demonstrated that you can have a great PA sound, at least with the stock Epiphone pickups that they're coming out with these days. I try to demonstrate here with these microphones that for $300 worth of microphones, you can cover everything that you need to do in your any recording situation that you can possibly find in your project studio, your home studio. Don't be very cash conscious when you're investing in your home recording studio. Also, ask yourself, if I had to leave at this moment and pack all this up, could I do it? My entire pedal rig I can put in its case, which I got right here, zip it up, grab whichever guitar that I think, probably the SG because it's light, and I'm out of here, and I could start all over again, and I could actually record. I could go back to recording everything with just those two items. I preach a lightness. I preach a simplicity to your rig. I really feel that get your basic rig right, and you're good to go. You can avoid a lot of gas too. I'm the anti-20 guitar hanging on the wall channel. I got up to 10 or so. I think go back and look in my Singapore days, I got up to 3 or 4 Gibsons, Epiphones, a couple of this, that's, and the other. And one day when I was packing up and bringing it here, I was really horrified. I'll say that again. I was truly horrified and just said to myself, this is too much. So when I started this channel again here after the move, I said, let me preach simplicity to really try to reduce the amount of things that you guys have in your studios down to the things that you really need. And I'm going to show you what I use and what I think is pretty cool. Yeah, that didn't fall. Things that I think are pretty cool that I like to share with you every week. This week coming up, what are we going to talk about? That is always a great thing. What subject am I going to bring up this week? I kind of want to get into speakers this week. I'm going to get back into amps and talk about speakers. I'm going through this whole thing talking about the real thing versus emulation. So yeah, this week we're going to do, that's what I had scheduled. So we're going to talk about speakers this week. The, of course, analog speaker versus the IRs. And again, getting into that theme that there are some places where you can make cuts and there's some places that you can't. And I'll tell you where I think whether you can or can't in terms of the analog speaker versus the IR. All right, guys, short one this week. Yeah, I got to 40 minutes, and you guys hung in there. I hope, again, you don't mind my rambling on this subject of microphones tonight and how I believe that with the right mic preamp, again, whether it's hardware based or software based, you can pretty much well get away with inexpensive microphones because these days it doesn't matter. With the emulations, my God, I mean, the sky's the limit. If you have just a great mic that's able to get a good basic tone, the emulations will do the rest for you. And believe me, 90% of the listening audience is not going to know the difference between that and the real thing. Whether you use an SM57 to emulate a 414, they're not going to know. So yeah, great subject. I enjoyed bringing it to you. I really thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Now, whether you're watching this live right now, and thanks guys for watching live, 3 of you tonight. God bless you guys for taking the time to watch tonight. Or if you're watching this in the rerun, I want to thank you so much for taking a moment of your time to watch. Our lives are very busy, and 40 minutes is a big hunk of time in a day to dedicate to my ramblings, but I hope that you can take something away from this or give you a moment or something like that, something to take away from. I really do hope. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like what you see, every week that we do this, live stream once a week and usually content once or twice a week on the regular channel. It's been a lot of fun. And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about on this channel from, again, this perspective, trying to save you money, but show you where you can cut corners and cannot cut corners to get the best sound possible, best tone possible. So if you haven't subscribed with us, we would love to have you join this community here. Guys, until next week, you take care. I'm going to go have some ice cream. Until the next one, you guys have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.